Thank you, and welcome everyone to the conference. I'm excited to be here. Today I'm going to show you how Enterprise Guide bridges the systems, particularly between VIA Workbench and VIA Compute. So today I'm going to cover, first, what are we talking about? What do I mean by bridging the systems? When did this respective functionality, when was it added? Why does it matter to you all? And I really want to focus on how, actually showing you it in action inside of Enterprise Guide. A lot of times I assume everyone knows what Enterprise Guide is because it has been around for a long time, but I shouldn't assume that. Very quickly, Enterprise Guide is a graphical user interface to SaaS. For a lot of folks, it is their window into SaaS. It's a client interface that does ad hoc query and reporting, analysis. It has a lot of point-and-click tasks. So you have a low-code, no-code approach, but it also has a robust programming interface. So a lot of times we say it's the Swiss Army knife of clients at SaaS. But ultimately, it is a productivity tool that allows you to get quicker outcomes faster. If you leave with nothing else today, the point of this talk is the fact that SaaS Enterprise Guide now works seamlessly with any SaaS server version. And I'll dive into that in a little more detail, but that's really what we mean by SaaS Enterprise Guide bridges the systems. So what does that look like? In a little more detail, here's a topology diagram with Enterprise Guide at the middle. SaaS Enterprise Guide has supported SaaS 9 for many, many years, and for a long time that was the only show in town. Well, SaaS VIA 3, when that was added, Enterprise Guide added support for VIA 3. And it does that using a proprietary technology we call IOM, Integrated Object Model, essentially integration technologies to communicate with those versions of the servers. And then VIA 4 came along. Enterprise Guide, the same client, added support for VIA 4 through the REST APIs. And now, with the addition of Workbench, Enterprise Guide, again, is adding support for this new environment, again, via the REST APIs. So, okay, I mentioned that SaaS 9 support has been there for many, many years, essentially from the beginning. When was this other functionality added? Well, we added support. Okay, one step back. When I say SaaS Enterprise Guide supported V9 for many years, that was with a SaaS metadata server. So Enterprise Guide would connect to a SaaS metadata server, and in that metadata server, you would define workspace servers. An administrator might define the workspace servers they want their end users to have access to. And for many years, that worked really well. And then in Enterprise Guide 8.2, we added the ability for end users to explicitly specify connections to workspace servers. And that means you don't have to use metadata server if you don't want to. It also enabled connections to VIA 3 because there is a workspace server in VIA 3. And then Enterprise Guide 8.4, this was March of last year, we added the ability to connect to VIA 4 servers. In December of this past year, we actually released an EG VIA-only installer. And this was important because prior to that, even though Enterprise Guide worked with VIA 4 and it worked with VIA 3.5, the only way to get Enterprise Guide was to place a V9 order. Now, with the EG VIA-only installer, you can go to the download site on support.saas.com and freely download this EG installer and use it with VIA connections. It is missing the V9 pieces, integration technologies, the SaaS OLEDB data providers, to connect to SaaS 9 servers. But if you're using it for VIA only or for Workbench, it is freely downloadable on the support site. There are some license requirements, which I'll get into in a little bit more details. And you'll notice support for VIA Workbench is coming in 8.6 in June, next month. So it's right around the corner. Okay, so why does this matter to you? One, it provides consistency, a consistent user experience for your end users. A lot of folks have user bases that have been using for Enterprise Guide for a really long time. They already are realizing the productivity benefits. Rather than forcing them to adopt new user interfaces, if they consider migrating to VIA 4, they can use the same interface and connect to V9, VIA 3.5, VIA 4, or Workbench and retain that consistent user experience. It also lets you utilize the strengths of those respective platforms, which I'll get into a little more details on the next slide. And finally, it allows you to ease migration, so you can direct workloads to these different environments at your own pace. Okay, so what are some of the strengths of these respective environments? Again, the SAS 9 platform has been around a really long time, an incredibly powerful analytics platform. SAS VIA 4 is now a cloud-native platform, and there's a lot of benefits that come along with that. The fact that it runs in Kubernetes and scalability is a huge one. You can spin up additional pods for increased workloads as needed. They spin down when the demand is lower. VIA also utilizes the CAS in-memory server. So if you've got very large analytic problems, that is the optimum in performance. And it includes newer procedures like proc Python and more. SAS VIA Workbench, one of our latest options, is really the on-demand computing power. I'll show you in the demo here. It spins up super fast. It really focused on self-service. It's code-centric, but it also has the latest procedures. And you know, it's much easier to deploy and use than deploying the entire VIA 4 stack, for example. And one thing that I really want to stress is that you can mix and match these in Enterprise Guide. So you don't have to use just one. You can use one in Enterprise Guide or any combination. All right, so now how? I'm going to switch to the demo, and I want to demonstrate how you work with a VIA 4 server in Enterprise Guide, how you work with Workbench in Enterprise Guide, what migrating content between those environments might look like, and then some of the requirements I mentioned earlier. And I apologize, I was sick, I had a cold about a week and a half, now I just have this annoying lingering cough. But all right, so I'm going to switch to Enterprise Guide, and just like you would if you were connecting to a metadata server, you'll notice on the top right corner, I'm currently connected to a V9 profile. It says UIT Server 5. And if you go to Tools, Connections, this is where you define connections to metadata servers or to additional servers. You'll notice these are all my metadata profiles. When I click on servers, I have several additional servers that are listed. And then you'll notice there's an Add button on the right. And this is Enterprise Guide 8.6, which I'm showing. You'll notice now you have the option to choose a direct connection to a SAS 9 workspace server, a VIA 3 workspace server, a VIA 4 compute server, or a VIA Workbench. So if I want to create a new VIA 4 server, I select VIA 4, I get a dialog, and all I need to supply is a name and a URL to that VIA 4 instance. To save me from having to remember, I'm going to copy and paste. And this is the URL to this particular VIA 4 deployment. I could optionally change the compute context. The compute context is where I might do some auto exec commands or change settings for that particular compute environment. Underneath advanced, I could specify a client ID or secret if I created a custom client. Or I could change the file navigation route. So I'm going to click Add at this point, and you'll notice now in the server list over here, I've got this VIA 4 server that I just added. And when I go to, the first time I go to connect to that server, you'll notice I get redirected to SAS Logon. And this is for authenticating. And so I log into this VIA deployment and asks me if I want to authorize access. And then it supplies me an authorization code, which I'm going to copy and then go back to Enterprise Guide. And you'll notice in Enterprise Guide, there's a dialog that basically tells me that it's asking me to log in and get the authorization code and paste it back into Enterprise Guide. This is very similar to what you might do for Netflix or YouTube TV if you were connecting. And the important thing is this authorization you only have to do the first time, well, once every 90 days, because what Enterprise Guide does is it downloads a refresh token, and by default, this refresh token validity is good for 90 days. And you'll notice now I'm connected in the server pane, and that VIA 4 server is connected. I've got access to my libraries. I can navigate those libraries just like you could from a V9 server. I can open data from those libraries just like you could from any other server, as well as access the file system on that VIA server. You'll notice I've got home, and so when I expand home, I now see the file system on that VIA 4 server. The other reason this is important, oh, and I do want to show one more thing, SAS content is also listed here. So if you're familiar with SAS Studio in VIA 4, you can also access SAS content. You can also access the VIA file system. And the nice thing about this is now you can use whatever client you want, whether it's Enterprise Guide or SAS Studio or even the SAS extension for VS Code. They all surface the file system, SAS content, and the libraries can be connected to the same data sources as well. So you can work seamlessly between those various clients. Okay, so that's connecting to VIA 4. For Workbench, for Workbench, you'll notice that I pointed out on the connections dialog, you have the ability to add a workbench. And if you got a workbench, you similarly provide a URL where you've already defined workbenches. But what's much nicer is if you actually start from the workbench interface or web page. So here I've got, I'm actually logged into VIA Workbench, and this is where I'm getting started. I can create a new workbench or open an example workbench. And I'm going to open an example workbench. And again, what this is doing is starting a compute environment, self-service, extremely fast, ready to work. Well, and I got this last time too, but it creates the workbench. The thing I want to point out is that once you've created this workbench, I created an example one with 2 cores and 8 gigs of memory. If instead of doing the sample one, I could have chosen different levels of compute, additional cores, additional memory. But the cool thing is it spins up that compute environment super fast. And if you're familiar with Workbench, VS Code and Jupyter Lab were previously the 2 client interfaces. Now you'll notice there's Enterprise Guide. And when I select Enterprise Guide, this one was initially started with VS Code. And so yes, I want to restart this workbench specifically for Enterprise Guide. And it does take it a couple seconds for it to switch the interfaces. But once the interface is switched, you'll notice that it will actually launch Enterprise Guide. And so you can see on the web page, it is starting that workbench specifically for Enterprise Guide. And then I'll get updated. Okay, so there, the workbench has now been switched over to Enterprise Guide. The web page prompts me, hey, do I want to start Enterprise Guide 8.6? And after I've created the workbench for EG that one time, I can go to this web page at any time and click that launch for Enterprise Guide, and it'll launch Enterprise Guide directly for me if I don't already have it started. But the reason I want to point out connecting this way is that more than just launching Enterprise Guide, it actually sends over the workspace connection. And so I called it example, but I might say my workbench. And I'm going to set it as the default server. And so when I say OK, it is now added that server definition to my servers pane. You can see it there in the servers pane on the left. It created a new program, and you'll notice the drop-down, my workbench is now the default server. And so if I were to submit some code, I just want to show real quick that all this is doing is printing out the version and the host name. And now you see that it's Vive 4 and SAS Workbench, just proving that it's working on the workbench. And the other thing that's really cool is, again, at this point, I've got a ton of servers defined. We test with a ton of servers. You might have dev, test, prod. But at this point, you can direct these programs to literally any other server that you want to run. So let me go to a little bit more likely scenario. So say you've got an existing EG project where you've been using Enterprise Guide with V9 for many years. And if I run this project, notice in the submission status pane in the bottom right, SAS app is the server where all of those nodes are running. Well, now that I have a workbench and I have a Vive 4 servers defined, I can selectively choose where I want these to run. So this Heart dataset, for example, when I hover over it, you'll notice it says SAS app. Well, I can right-click, go to Properties, change this data source, and instead of SAS app, I might go to a this Vive 4 server. One other thing I do want to point out about Vive 4, and this is one of the benefits, is the scalability I mentioned earlier. Whenever you make a compute connection, it is spinning up a new pod and loading a new container image. So there is a little extra time in making that initial connection to a Vive 4 server. But once you're connected, it's fast. And so I'm going to select the same data set, Heart. And maybe, and now this program I might direct to, well, I'll leave it on Vive 4, but you'll notice this time when I run the flow again, you'll notice that Heart, that query builder, actually ran on the Vive 4 server, MWF PGC. And so another thing I want to point out is that is a manual changing one node at a time. But if you want to, and so it gives you the ability to move workloads piecemeal. But if you've got lots of projects or lots of nodes in an EG project, that can be very cumbersome. So I want to show you a better way that you could do that. So instead of doing one node at a time, you can go to Tools, Project Maintenance. And I have to close this project. And what Project Maintenance does is it identifies references within your project. So server references, library references, table references. And the neat thing is then you can change those references. So here it's saying that I've got a reference to SAS app, and I want to change every reference of SAS app to a different server. So I'm going to change all of those references now to my Vive 4 server. And I can say, OK, now you'll notice in my servers list, I only have one server in this project. I'll save those changes, and I'm going to run this project one more time. And in the submission pane on the bottom right, now you'll notice that all of those nodes, well, it's hard to get there with the zoom tool, but all of those nodes are now running on the Vive 4 server. And this is another thing that I want to highlight. I've got this other project where it's literally a mix of every server. So if I clear this and run this project, again, in the servers pane, you'll see I've got some nodes running in a Workbench. I've got some running in V9. I've got some running even in VIA 3.5 and some in VIA 4. So again, the point is that you can target whatever servers you want with the same programs, and you're going to get the same results. So like I've got, this is the same program that I ran in 4 different servers, 4 different server versions. And you'll notice if I compare them side by side, and you'll notice in the title I actually put the syshost name, so that one ran on VIA 4, this one ran on Workbench, this one ran on VIA 9.4. The point being you get consistent results regardless of which one. So the slides, again, go over what I just showed in detail. This is defining a VIA 4 server, authenticating, defining a Workbench server, authenticating. I showed the fact that you can mix and match within your project. And I showed the migration, being able to do it a la carte, one node at a time, using project maintenance. One thing to note is project maintenance does one project at a time, whatever the currently open project is. There's also a migration wizard utility in the EG installation directory, which will allow you to update one or more projects at the same time. So if all of your, say you have a large collection of projects, you can select multiple folders and update all of those. So here's the project maintenance that does one at a time. This one, the migration wizard, lets you select multiple folders to migrate a whole collection of projects. And last but not least, the requirements. First, you have to acquire Enterprise Guide. If you already have Enterprise Guide installed, you can use check for updates to upgrade to the latest version, or you could place a new SAS 9 order. And I mentioned earlier, you can now download a version for free on downloads.com. However, the version you download for free, if you use that with VIA 4, you do have to have a Studio Analyst or Studio Engineer license. When EG attempts to connect to VIA 4, it checks for the existence of one of those licenses. And if it isn't present, it disallows the connection to VIA 4. With VIA Workbench, any license to VIA Workbench will work with that version of Enterprise Guide. So finally, I want to just reiterate the strengths. It gives you that consistent user experience. It allows you to utilize the strengths of the various server offerings, and it eases migration. So if you want to start dabbling with VIA 4 or dabbling with Workbench, the fact that you can use the same client is incredibly powerful rather than having to learn an entirely new interface. So with that, I will ask if there are any questions. And if we run out of time, come see me at the Enterprise Guide booth. I'd be happy to answer questions. So do we have time? Okay, well, only time for one question. But yeah, come see me at the Enterprise Guide booth if you have more questions.
So I thought up there, when you pulled up Enterprise Guide, it looked like it was web-based, but is it not web-based, or?
Enterprise Guide is not web-based. It is a Windows desktop application. So we intentionally tried to make it look consistent with SAS Studio, just so that you can have those seamless experiences, but it is a Windows desktop application. So, well, thank you again. Please come see me at the EG booth.